A Beta Xtrainer review. Some owners say it's the best value two-stroke enduro bike available. Other owners love the lightweight and power delivery for slow technical terrain. But some say it's underpowered and has terrible suspension. Any of these could be true, it depends on your style of riding. This will be quite a long video, use the index if you are in a hurry. A quick history. The first Xtrainer begins in 2015. It quickly gained popularity due to its low price, low seat height, lightweight and user-friendly power delivery. There were issues with the mechanical oil injection though. 2016, the electronic oil injection proves more reliable, although there were still occasional issues. 2019, a mapping switch was added. 2020, a counterbalanced engine for less vibrations. Valving changes made the suspension a bit firmer, but the springs stayed the same. 2022, an engine redesign uses a new cylinder, piston, power valve and crankshaft for a shorter stroke and wider bore. A diaphragm clutch results in an easier clutch pull. 2023, a larger translucent fuel tank, redesigned larger airbox and a lithium battery. There will be a new engine for the 250 derived from the RRX Pro with a shorter stroke, which claims to now be similar to the power of the 300. Also a new speedo and changed second gear ratio. Who should consider buying a Beta Xtrainer? Short riders who want the lowest seat possible, anyone focused on the lightweight above all other factors, riders mainly focused on slow technical riding, beginners who prefer a two-stroke to a four-stroke, and riders wanting a very cheap two-stroke and won't be riding fast or aggressively. The key to understanding the Beta Xtrainer? Imagine a spectrum between trials riding and enduro riding. Various models have appeared and were a bit too trials oriented to ever be popular. We believe the success of the Xtrainer is because it's much closer to enduro models but retains just enough trials influence to suit a lot of riders. Have a close look at this graph. It might help you decide if you should look at the RR300 or other enduro models instead. The benefits of a trials influence with the Xtrainer: the seat height is 20mm lower than its enduro brother, the RR300, which is already quite low, and it's a huge 53mm lower than the KTM 300 EXC. Lightweight, it's arguably the lightest 300 enduro model available at 108 kilograms with a full tank. It uses a detuned RR300 engine and has roughly the same low to mid-range power but avoids the screaming top-end power, which suits less aggressive riders and beginners. This also means the expansion chamber is a lot smaller, so it's much less likely to get damaged by rocks or crashes. The steering geometry and shorter wheelbase make the Xtrainer very nimble at lower speeds. The Xtrainer also has a much tighter turning circle, which is great on tight corners. The suspension is from R16V, formerly called Ole, and it's heavily trials influenced. It's quite soft compared to proper enduro suspension, but this can work well for beginners or weighting and de-weighting the bike in gnarly terrain. The forks only have one spring and basic internals. We believe the suspension is the main reason for the lighter weight and much lower price of the Xtrainer. It's around 15% cheaper than the RR300 and 40% cheaper than a KTM 300 EXC.
Smack into the tree.
It's interesting to see the Xtrainer come standard with a radiator fan, which is useful if you do a lot of slower, hard terrain. This is usually never fitted to the base enduro models across the brands, except the Riehu. The cons? Unfortunately, that trials influence won't suit a lot of riders. In third gear or higher, the steering becomes quite twitchy and there isn't much inline stability. Heavy and or aggressive riders will start to find the limits of the suspension very quickly, even though an experienced rider, like Trevor Henderson, could fly on this motocross track. If you enjoy the scream of a two-stroke at full throttle, you will find the maximum horsepower disappointing. You can get a lot more with an aftermarket expansion chamber, but you will then encounter that poor handling at speed. This is when many riders realise they should have bought the RR300 instead. While the cross trainer is great in gnarly terrain, that low seat height and shorter suspension mean your foot pegs and skid plate will hit more often in deep ruts and over logs.
Oh, you bugger.
Also, very tall riders will have trouble fitting on the smaller cross trainer. It's not impossible, of course. Me, I am well over 6 feet tall, but I have bar risers and lower foot pegs fitted. But it is a bit more cramped than full-sized enduro bikes. Known issues. Back in 2018 and 2019, Beta had serious issues with main bearing failures. There was never a definitive reason given. If you consider buying an 18 or 19 cross trainer, remember there's a small chance the problem might be ongoing. If buying any older cross trainers, see our Beta known issues videos we have been doing since 2015. Known issues on the more recent cross trainers, Beta electrics have never been great. In 2022, there was electrical corrosion on brand new bikes that could cause oil pump failure and seizing. We think it's been resolved, but it's probably a good idea to get some dielectric grease into the connections. It was around that time I think dealers were just replacing the entire wiring harness if owners had any electrical issues. It seems to be better on the more recent models. The plastics have never been great. Back in 2015, they would almost break if you sneezed on them. They have improved, but they still crack easily. The oil injection system. There's a lot of debate about whether the oil injection is a known issue. There are certainly cases where it has failed and engines have seized. However, the vast majority of riders have no issues. This has been the case for me with 2 cross trainers now over 5 years. However, I did speak with a Beta mechanic about this. His suggestion, he said for peace of mind, it's not a bad idea to remove the system once your warranty is finished and use premix. He said the failure rate is very low, but just high enough to at least consider this modification. Suspension mods. As discussed, it's cheap, basic, trials-oriented suspension that may work for non-aggressive riders or anyone mainly focused on slow technical terrain. For example, I am 90 kilograms or 200 pounds. For slow technical riding, it works reasonably well, but I think anyone heavier will probably want stiffer springs at a minimum. Me, the moment I try and ride at speed over rough terrain, I'm often bounced around and it just gets worse the faster I ride. This was much worse on my 2018 cross trainer, which had very little damping. In 2020, the valving was changed and the stock cross trainer forks are now better at handling speed, but not by much. Is it worth modifying the suspension? Perhaps. The cheaper price of the cross trainer does free up some cash for suspension mods. But personally, I believe the more expensive options aren't worth it. Just buy a proper enduro bike instead. My suggestion? I think the cheapest valve kits are those from DFX in Australia. The rear shock kit is 269 Aussie dollars and the fork upgrade kit is $479. But remember, that does not include springs. Otherwise, another budget option is just find a Beta RR300 front end to fit. This will also give you the more stable steering geometry for faster riding. But if you have more dollars than common sense, buy the Öhlins rear shock and forks for 8,500 Australian dollars. Other common mods, the fatty front tyre. A 90-121 front tyre works really well on the cross trainer. It reduces that twitchy feeling at speed. If you are tall, consider fitting bar risers and fastway foot pegs in the low rear set position. There's only one throttle cable. We use a cable tie to secure it firmly at the top of the carburetor. Occasionally it can pop out and cause high revs. Radiator guards. These are probably a good idea on any enduro bike if you crash regularly, but Beta radiators are very easy to bend. Ask me how I know. Why did we choose the cross trainer? We are getting old. My brother is in his late 50s, I am in my early 60s, We mainly ride slow, gnarly terrain, so we chose the lightest Enduro 300 two-strokes possible. We have spent the last year on the stock suspension, but we are seriously thinking about fitting double R300 forks because the cross trainers are so unstable on more open tracks. Our summary: it's a great choice if you want a cheap, reliable, very light two-stroke with a low seat height. It's definitely aimed at beginners or experienced riders focusing on slow, gnarly terrain, or not aggressively. Otherwise, the cheap suspension will cause problems. We recommend not spending too much on suspension mods, as otherwise you will be better off with a proper enduro bike. Ever ridden or owned a Beta Xtrainer? What did you think? What mods did you make? Let us know in the comments.